Hello everybody, and welcome to Rokai's Raid Guide for the final boss in Heart of Fear, Grand Empress Shek'zeer. If you managed to make it this far, this fight shouldn't be too difficult for you, as the main wall of the raid is Amber Shaper, so we'll briefly be going over the phases of the fight, the general mechanics, and the comp we used to take care of this bug. So, for this fight in 10-man, you're going to want 2 tanks, 3 healers, and then any mixture of DPS. Important note compared to 25-man that strategies often use a third tank that is not needed in 10-man. And then also, this may be killable later on with more gear with 2 healers in farm, but in a progression setting, the first time you're seeing this boss, very likely is going to require 3 healers, as the constant damage going out on the raid is extremely high, and you're going to want access to a lot of damage reduction cooldowns. Now, this fight is a 3-phase fight where I will refer to each phase as boss phase, add phase, and then the execute phase. So, phase 1 of the fight is a single target boss fight where there are a handful of mechanics to pay attention to with lots of raid wide damage. Phase 2 is an add phase where the boss becomes untargetable and hides in the corner. And then phase 3 returns back to a single target boss fight at 30% HP with a few added mechanics. So, for phase 1, which you can see on the screen now, the main 2 mechanics of this fight are called Dissonance Field as well as Cry of Terror. Dissonance Field spawns 2 yellow fields on the floor that you can see here that do pulsing damage to the entire raid. Now, at some point during the fight, there's going to be a mechanic that corrupts one of these dissonance fields, turning it Shaw corrupted and increasing the amount of damage that it does. Your main objective during phase 1 is both to heal through the damage that is happening from these, but also get these fields out of the encounter as quickly as possible. The way you do that is simple. Standing inside of a corrupted zone or a regular dissonance field, casting spells inside it, or receiving healing while inside these fields will cause it to explode, go away, and do a large pulse of damage. However, will end the continuous pulsing damage of that field. What you're going to want to do if you get the Cry of Terror mechanic is enter the dissonance fields like I'm doing here, continue to do damage to the boss or heal your friends. That will reduce the amount of HP that the dissonance field has. Exit the field before it reaches 0% HP, and have a raid cooldown available for the large pulse of damage once that dissonance field disappears. An important note is that the Cry of Terror mechanic will do large amounts of raid-wide damage to everybody in the raid unless you are standing inside a dissonance field. So it's extremely important, if you get the Cry of Terror mechanic, get inside one of those dissonance fields and always try to prioritize the one that is corrupted. Now, entering phase 2, or the add phase, this phase is extremely difficult in its first 30 seconds or so, but afterwards becomes very, very simple. So, initially, as you enter this phase, adds are going to spawn from both the left side and right side of the room, each pack containing 1 Reaver and 3 Wind Blades. Your 2 tanks are going to be responsible for each picking up 1 specific type of add. So in this case, we had our Brewmaster pick up the Wind Blades, and we had our Blood DK pick up the Reavers. Now, as a DPS and a healer, you're completely ignoring the larger add or the Reaver, which you can see are currently being tanked on the opposite side of the room. Everybody else will be DPSing down the Wind Blades and interrupting one important mechanic called Dispatch. You want to make sure that channeled cast gets interrupted as quickly as possible, as it does a ton of raid-wide damage. Then you can see on me, this Fixate is the only other mechanic that the Wind Blades will do, and at all times, if you are fixated, you need to be over 20 yards away from the add. It is not just a melee, it is 20 plus yards. Super important distinction from normal Fixate mechanics. The final piece of this add phase, as you can see on the screen now, are these bubbling resins. What will happen is the Wind Blades will put small orange puddles on the floor, which is a sticky resin, that you will want to stack together to create traps. Initially, the way this is done is 2 people that have sticky resin must touch character models and drop a bubbling resin on the floor. From that point forward, anybody who gets sticky resin can run across that bubbling resin, and at 5 stacks, it will turn into a trap. Once the Reaver is brought into the trap, it will do 5% of its health every couple of seconds and eventually kill the add. There is nothing else that you need to do other than build 2 separate stacks of 5 bubbling resins to create these traps and bring the Reavers into it. Pro tip for this final piece of the ad phase is to kite at least one wind blade around the room with slows for as long as necessary to build these traps. So do not kill it, leave one wind blade alive outside the rest of the pack so that it can continue to drop the sticky resin and give your healers a break while there's not much damage happening. As you enter back into the boss phase, again, it is a fixed amount of time that you'll be in this phase, 2.5 minutes, unless the boss reaches 30% HP. So during this time, I will go more into detail about how to handle each of the mechanics we talked about earlier, because again, it's the same mechanics we saw in the first boss phase. Shock Corrupted Dissonance Fields, Regular Dissonance Fields, and Cry of Terror. Important notes. Ranged players and healers are going to want to be spread during the boss phase of this fight. There is increased damage for stacking. There's splash damage that happens. You're going to want to be spread or you're going to be taking more damage than needed. Secondly, for the Dissonance Field explosions, you're always going to want either a raid cooldown or a large personal cooldown for each explosion. The way we typically handled it was using a raid cooldown for the first explosion of a Dissonance Field, and then using a personal cooldown for the second explosion of a Dissonance Field. Again, this is all very scripted. You'll get 2 Dissonance Fields every 60 seconds, which means you only get a total of 4 per phase, so these can all be pre-planned out. For example, you can barrier the Shock Corrupted explosion and then have everybody use a personal or immunity for the second one. And then 60 seconds later, the next set of Dissonance Fields come out. You can use a Spirit Link Totem or a Devotion Aura from a Paladin. And then the fourth one, you use a personal, so on and so forth. Outside of that, nothing else is happening during this boss phase. Be at full health for each Dissonance Field explosion. Use personal cooldowns or raid cooldowns as needed. And as you reach 30% boss HP, it will then push into the final phase of the fight, where the mechanics will change. You're going to want to use Bloodlust and nuke the boss as quickly as possible. Okay, so entering into the final phase of the fight, which is triggered at 30% boss HP, there are 3 new mechanics to pay attention to. The first is a giant frontal with a purple ground effect that the entire raid needs to dodge. The second is a fear mechanic, which we'll talk about more in just a second. And the final is a mechanic called Heart of Fear, which is a tank soak. Anybody who gets Heart of Fear just needs to be in position so that a tank can stand between them and the boss to absorb this damage. As you can see here, that purple frontal just went out. The entire raid just needs to dodge that. At this time, we'll also all be stacked. And the final and most difficult mechanic of the last phase is the one that I just received here. It is a fear. 2 players randomly selected in the raid will get a debuff that after 4 seconds will expire and trigger a fear on that player and any player standing near them. So it's extremely important. If you get this mechanic, run out of the raid and get dispelled by your healers. Important and useful note, things like immunities, Tremor Totems, Nimble Brew for Monks, and any other mechanic similar to that will help you escape these fears. Run out, have healers assigned to dispel each target, run back in and stack with your raid, and burn the boss. And that sums up everything you need to know to take down Grand Empress Shek'zeer in 10-man Heart of Fear Heroic. Best of luck, everybody, progging your kills. Healers, buckle up. This one's fun. And then I look forward to seeing you all in Terrace of the Endless Springs. If you have anything you need from me, questions about this boss, feedback about the guide, please leave it in a comment below. I'm always listening, always open to improving. Can't wait to see you guys in the next one.